Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Kuli English Podcast. It's me, your host, Chris. So this episode is episode 41, and I want to talk a little bit about the previous episode, episode 40, which was the Three Little Pigs. And so that episode, I thought it was a pretty fun episode. And in case you haven't listened to it, basically what I did was there's a really famous story called The Three Little Pigs, and I basically read that in the podcast. And by reading it, I'm not actually reading it from a book. I just kind of read it from the top of my head. So the top of my head meaning I'm just thinking about it. I don't actually have anything written. I don't have a book. I don't have any notes. I don't have any pages in front of me. And so I did that. And then later on, actually, that episode got taken down. So taken down meaning you can't post it publicly. This is illegal, is what I was told by Spotify. So Spotify sent me an email and said, you can't have this episode up because The Three Little Pigs belongs to someone else. And then there's some other podcast episode called Three Little Pigs. And then some other person that's not me. So it's not Kuli English Podcast. It's not Chris. Someone else put up an episode. And then so what I had to do is I had to appeal this. So appeal means to if someone tells you, you did this wrong, and you say, no, actually, can you please look at it one more time? Or you say no, actually, that might be a mistake. And that's called appealing. So I had to send an appeal email to try to appeal the decision and say, no, please, I didn't steal anything. And that's the truth. In that episode, I basically, just spoke and talked about the story. And I didn't actually have any hard copy, anything that I was reading off of. So there are no pages, there's no notes, there's no actual book or anything. I just talked about it. And then for some reason, the automatic detection system said, oh, this is stealing. You stole this from someone else. And then I had to appeal it. And then Spotify, I think within a couple hours, they sent back another email that was okay, fine. Actually, you're right. You didn't steal anything. And so then that episode actually probably wasn't available for 24 hours. I always upload the episodes at the same time. So they all go up on Tuesday at 7 a.m. in Japan time. But that episode, it might have taken another day or so because Spotify was you're a bad person. I have to say, no, I'm not a bad person. Again, that's called appealing. So I try to appeal the decision. So anyways, in this podcast episode, I want to tell you about my Malaysia trip. So I went to Malaysia just this past week. And then in Malaysia is actually where I uploaded the Three Little Pigs episode. and then I had to deal with the appealing of the decision in Malaysia. But I want to tell you about my Malaysia trip. And so I'm going to be talking about that. And then, of course, I'll also be mixing a couple random other stories and a couple other random English explanations as well. But with that, let's go ahead and take a short little music break, and then we'll come back and continue. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started and talk about Malaysia. So Malaysia, number one, if you don't know where Malaysia is, let me go ahead and explain that to you. So Malaysia is south of Thailand, and Thailand is next to Vietnam. The whole section of that part of Asia is called Southeast Asia. So Malaysia is close to the Philippines. Malaysia is right next to Singapore. So if you're going to fly from Singapore to Malaysia, or Malaysia to Singapore, that flight's probably just less than 2 hours. So it's really close. And Malaysia, actually, one of the most wonderful things about Malaysia is it's really inexpensive. So, I am born and raised in the US, and then I live in Japan now. And then compared to these two countries, Malaysia costs less to do everything. So the way that I say this is Malaysia is inexpensive. So inexpensive means not expensive. And the way that I guess you can kind of explain that. If you don't know what that means is if you want to go out to eat something in Malaysia, let's say we're hungry, we want to go out to eat dinner, then in Malaysia, if you go to eat dinner, it'll cost probably less than if I wanted to go eat the same thing in Japan or the US or something. And, this is a general thing. So it doesn't mean it's always true. Of course, if I go to Malaysia and I want to eat some really fancy lobster, then it's going to cost more than if I go to a Japanese McDonald's or something like that. But in general, food is actually great in Malaysia, and it's also pretty cheap. And I should also mention that I said Malaysia is inexpensive. I didn't say Malaysia is cheap. And cheap kind of means inexpensive, but cheap can also have a negative meaning. But inexpensive usually it always is positive. So that's why I said Malaysia is inexpensive. If I say Malaysia is cheap, then I might be saying something kind of mean. But of course, probably I don't. And, the real feeling is what counts. And the real feeling is I had a great time and it's nice. But I should also mention that some of the stuff I didn't really have a great time. And that was I got sick. So on the flight to Malaysia, I was kind of feeling like maybe I'm getting sick. I'm not sure. And then on the flight, like what I'm really scared of is getting sick on like flights. I think that's what I'm the most scared of. So when I hear lots of noises on the plane, for example, if babies are crying, like I don't really care. Okay, so babies can cry, they can prevent me from sleeping. That's okay. I don't really sleep that much on planes, anyways. But what I'm scared of is like people coughing and like people like getting germs on me, and then I get sick. And then my trip, my 1 week trip, I'm supposed to be like enjoying it, but actually there were a lot of sick people around me, like to my front and to my back, like I was just surrounded by sick people. So there's people like like nasty coughs. So it's not like little coughs, like sometimes people have little coughs that are just like or something like that. But they were like really like wet, strong coughs. So there's a phrase that people it's called a productive cough. And a productive means like you are producing a result, like it's good, it moves you forward. And so like the way that a lot of medicine and doctors will say is that when you take this medicine, it'll make your coughs more productive. So more things will come out, and that's like a good thing. It like feels better to do that. But the people on the plane while I was flying from Japan to Malaysia, like they were having super productive coughs, which is good for them because they're probably getting something out of their system. But it's like bad for me because then the germs are gonna come to me. And then I was sick every single day in Malaysia. So I was already sick when I went to Malaysia, and then when I was leaving Malaysia is when I was starting to actually feel better. So, I ate a bunch of food and stuff, and I experienced a lot of things, but I was actually pretty tired and a little bit sad about that. But, it's good to get better, and these kinds of things, you can't really control it. So I'm not really sure if I could have really done anything better to avoid getting sick. Sometimes you just get sick, and that's just how it is. And it's wild because I haven't been sick in like over a year, I think. And then like it just so happened that right as I went to this trip, then that's when I got sick. But let me tell you some more about Malaysia, but let's take a short little break here. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the most important part of Malaysia. The absolutely most important part of Malaysia is coconut water. So if you don't know already, I love coconut water. And Malaysia is in Southeast Asia, and Southeast Asia almost always has fantastic coconut water. So let me get right to it and tell you about coconut water. So there was this shop that I went to, and this shop only sells like coconut water. And they have like plain coconut water, and then they have like fancy coconut water, and then they have like super fancy coconut water. And they like make stuff and it turns into like shakes, and they add like these special like pistachio cream or something like that. But so this restaurant, not a restaurant, it's like a store. It's like a boba store. They like sell coconut water drinks, and that's their specialty. It was called E3. So like YEE3. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. And it doesn't mean anything in English, by the way. It maybe comes from some other language. I'm not sure. But I went there and I tried some coconut water. Remember, I'm like sick, so I'm like trying to drink more stuff. So I go there, I order some coconut water, and then I drink it. And then, I'm like a coconut water expert, right? So I drink it. I'm like, oh, okay, this is good. So I approve. I think it's great. And then I got the coconut water and I drank it and I was like, oh, this is good. And then so later on I came back and then I ordered like the large, which is just the bigger version. And the medium or the large, like because Malaysia is inexpensive, it was great. And every time I bought the coconut water, I was thinking, oh, this is like not expensive, I got to buy more. So then I drank a lot of coconut water. And then actually, I think basically every single day I like drank coconut water. And there was actually one day where I didn't go to that shop and buy coconut water, but the day before that I went to that shop and I bought two. So like basically I think it's fine to say I drank coconut water every single day in Malaysia. And the cashier lady, so the person who like basically takes my money and like sells me the drink, she also like started to recognize me after like the third or fourth time, because at one point I remember I was ordering and she was like, "Hi," and then there's kind of like two highs. There's like the first version of hi is just like hi, which doesn't really have much meaning behind it, and then there's like the hi, like the awkward hi, and so the awkward hi is the hi that you give when like two people like they see each other like I remember you, and the other person's like I remember you too, so it was like hi. And then I think she gave that kind of awkward hi, and then afterwards she was like, "Hi, you're allergic to nuts," and I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, I remember you said you're allergic to nuts." And I was like, "Yeah, that's true." But it was like so kind of random that I wasn't ready for it. And it's because I ordered like coconut water, and then I ordered this one special version that has like some kind of special I don't know, cheese cream or something on top. And there were also nuts on it, and I'm allergic to nuts. So then I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like, can you remove this nuts part?" And then that's fine. And you don't have to make the whole thing new. And then she's like, "That's no problem. I'll just make the whole thing new." Because I guess restaurants, they do that a lot. So then she made the new drink for me, and then she was like, "Okay, so I didn't put nuts, but since there were no nuts, I put extra cream in it for you." And I was like, "Oh wow, thank you." And that's how I remember her, because I was like, "Oh, she hooked me up. She gave me some great coconut water." And then I saw her again, and she's like, "Hi, you're allergic to nuts." And I was like, "What?" And then she was just remembering stuff about me and she's probably trying to say like, "Oh, hey, it's me, and I remember you," or something like that. But that was a pretty pleasant experience. I was happy about that. And because of that, I wanted to go more, but then I had to, leave Malaysia. So I couldn't go recently because I already came back to Japan. And also, so actually, in Malaysia, I drank a lot of coconut water, and I also ate some like local food and stuff like that. But I should talk about like like I should talk about English. So this is also something that I thought a lot about when I went to Malaysia as well. So, for example, in the US, English is very common, and in Japan, like Japanese is very common. So what about Malaysia? What is the most common language in Malaysia? And, there is a language that is like native to Malaysia, and that's Malay. But in Malaysia, there's such a big mix of cultures. There's like Chinese culture, there's like Malaysian culture, and there's like culture from the nearby countries. So there's also like Vietnam, Thailand, and then there's also like a lot of Arabic culture as well. And like in terms of religions, there's also a variety of religions as well. It's just a really big mixture of different groups of people. And so like the most common language in Malaysia is probably going to be English. Now, I'm not saying everyone speaks only English. I'm just saying the safest language that someone else probably also speaks is English. So, maybe I speak Chinese or I speak Malay, and then I go talk to someone else. But that person, I don't know if they also speak Chinese or Malay. They probably speak one or the other. I'm not sure, but they definitely speak English, because English is like the most common language there. So then a lot of people speak English. And the English has different accents too. There's like the Chinese accent English. There's like the Malaysian accent English. There's like kind of like the Singaporean accent for English. And it's I think it's actually really cool. And I actually struggled to understand like some English as well. So, I am a native English speaker. I was born and raised in the US, and I've taught English for over 2 years. So I've heard a lot of different accents. But at the same time, like I still couldn't understand a lot of English. And that's because a lot of my teaching experience, I usually had Japanese students, or in some cases, like, Chinese speaking students or students from other countries. But the vast majority of my students were Japanese. So like the Japanese accent, I'm like really used to it, and like Japanese grammar mistakes. So what I mean by that is like English, but then like the grammar is kind of like in a Japanese shape, so it doesn't really sound native. And that's totally fine. Like I still understand it because I'm used to it. But in Malaysia, it's a different accent. It's like a Malaysian accent, which is pretty similar to a Singaporean accent. And sometimes I just couldn't hear it. And also I was sick, so I was kind of like a little bit dumber than I usually am, because I'm kind of like, "Oh, I'm sick." And then so I'm like, not doing a great job listening. But I do remember at some point, like I would talk to people, and then the people would have like different intonations and different accents. And for the most part, I understand what's going on. But I remember once, like, I was asking the hotel, like, reception staff. So at the front desk is where you ask for stuff. That's where you check in. That's where you check out. And I wanted a phone charger because the plugs in Malaysia are a little bit different than like the plugs in Japan and the US. And so I was like, oh, I want a phone charger. Can you put like a phone charger in my room? And the guy was like, sure, no problem. We can do that for you. Do you also want... And I was like, what? And he's like, do you also want... And he said something that I didn't really understand. And I was like, wait a minute. Is that English? I don't really know. And then so I had to ask, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? And I said that so many times that I started to feel bad because, like, you know, if I say what too many times, I feel like I'm being mean or something. And it's not true. Like, I just didn't really understand, and they probably also know that too. But then, like, you know, 2 more hotel staff came. And, you know, they're saying like, yeah, do you want, and they started making these hand motions where they like rub their hands together. And I was like, what is that? And it turns out what they meant was like a little bit of a room cleaning, like a touch up or something. But I don't really know what they said. And they had to explain. They were like, oh, so, you know, we'll like take out the trash and like we'll kind of clean a little bit and we'll switch the towels and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, so yeah, it's like a touch up or a cleaning. Yeah, sure, no problem. Of course, that's fine. And in this moment, I was thinking, oh, so in Malaysia, you know, they have like different pronunciations, different accents and stuff, but it's actually really good because almost all people in Malaysia have had exposure to like talking to people with different accents. And that in itself, so let me say that again. In Malaysia, like, you know, they have different accents and stuff, but it's really good that they have the experience of talking to someone else that has a different accent than them. Because what happens is then you get used to the, like, there's this really big part of communication, which is when you don't understand, you say, wait, I don't understand. And then the other person like explains more. Or the short version of that is I say, what? And then you have to explain it again. And if I still don't understand, then I say, wait, what? What do you mean? What? And then you have to explain it again, or like 3rd time or something. And so in Malaysia, I think it's just a really common thing for people to meet other people from other cultures. And then your common language is English. So they may not be like super familiar with English, but they were used to using English for these situations. And so sometimes if something doesn't make it across, like I say, you know, like, I want to drink coconut water. And the other person's like, what? Then I have to say, you know, coconuts, you know, the coconut juice, I want to drink this. And then like you can say it in different ways and then it'll kind of make it across. So these are really good experiences, I think, for practicing English communication or just communication in general, not even English. So that was fantastic. And let's take a short little break here and then I'll come back and tell you some more stuff. All right, so let's make our way into this last section here where I'm talking about Malaysia stuff. And first off, I should apologize because, you know, people who are listening to this, some people might be expecting, oh, like Chris is going to tell me a bunch of stuff about Malaysia and then like it'll be really useful information and then I can go to Malaysia and I can like do the same stuff. But I actually haven't been really talking about like, you know, like what I did in Malaysia as much as I'm really talking more about like my experience. So like I went there and I was sick and I felt tired and then I drank coconut water and I was happy. So it's a really like personal, like a really subjective point of view. So subjective meaning like it's from the point of view of one person and it's not necessarily true for everybody. So let me continue with that and let me tell you about this one experience that I think was really good for me. Or, well, I thought it was nice. And that was when someone dropped chicken on me. So on the flight from Japan to Malaysia, like I was like feeling kind of sick, right? And then there's like sick people in front of me and behind me. So I'm just surrounded by like, you know, oh, this is a pretty tough situation. And at some point, like something fell on my foot. And it's not something heavy. It's not something hard, but it was kind of light and a little bit wet. And then, you know, I had my shoes on, so like it hit my shoe, but you could hear like a wet, like, like, you know, like wet stuff hit stuff. And like a chicken hit me. So a small piece of chicken with like some curry or like some wet sauce on it hit my shoe. And then I was thinking like, what is this? And then like I see in front of me like someone like moving like more as if they're looking for something. Like, oh, where's my chicken? And then the guy noticed that his chicken like fell down the crack. And then like he paused for a little bit, right? Probably because he's sad. He's like, oh no, my chicken like fell down the crack. Now I can't have the chicken. And then after the pause, he like looked back and he saw me looking at him. And then he put it together in his head and he was like, oh, my chicken must have like fell on him. And he's like, sorry. And then that's the only thing he said. And I'm not really looking for anything more. But I just thought it was kind of cute. And I thought it was actually pretty nice that the sorry was kind of well-spirited. It wasn't like oh, sorry, which I think like you might encounter that a lot in life where people say sorry, but they don't really mean it. But this guy was kind of like, oh, sorry. And it was just kind of funny because I don't know, I guess I was imagining, a situation where you maybe lose something that you want and you're like, oh man, I lost it. And then you realize, oh wait, actually, I might have dropped it on someone and that is kind of rude. So then he's like, oh, sorry. But so I thought that was really nice. And I thought actually a lot of Malaysia is actually just pretty nice. Like the vibe of everyday people on the street, the vibe in stores, it's actually really friendly. And I really like that. So as another example, like I already talked about it, but I drank coconut water every single day, right? And then so the employee like remembered me, and then out of nowhere, probably on like, the fourth day and like the fifth time that I was ordering coconut water, she was like, oh, hello, you're allergic to nuts. And then it's like, it's just funny because it's like, it's a really random thing to say to someone. It's like, hello, you're allergic to nuts. And I think normally it's like, hello, like, how was your day? Or like, hello, how are you? Or like, hello, nice to see you. But it's like, hello, you're allergic to nuts. And then I'm like, yes, it's true. Like, I'm allergic to nuts. But I like this. I like this kind of warmth. I'm not sure if everybody in the world likes that because some people probably prefer some distance. Like people, maybe they want the employee to not say anything or they want people to not interact as much. And I've lived in those kinds of parts of the world as well. But for me personally, I like it when people are kind of like friendly and like the chicken, it's fine. Like I'll wipe my shoe and call it an interesting experience that I can talk about in the podcast. So actually, let me tell you just like one more thing before we finish up this whole thing. So I do want to at least mention the stuff that I saw. So in Malaysia, there are like these really famous twin towers. And so they're like these skyscrapers. So skyscrapers are like really, really, really tall buildings. And they're like famous and cool because they're so tall. And then there's like two of them and they're like next to each other and there's a bridge connecting them. And these are called the Twin Petronas Towers. And so like I saw that. And then there's also like this place called the Pink Mosque, which is like a really, really big pink mosque. And a mosque is like a place for worship if you're Muslim. And if you're not Muslim, you can still go and like look at stuff. And they might have like, these special tourist areas. And like, because some people want to go there and just like pray. And then if tourists come and do a lot of stuff, then they don't like that. So they have like employees kind of like telling people, hey, since you look like a tourist, like go to the tourist section. And there's like a small tourist section that says tourist section. I thought I should, include some general information about Malaysia, but then also for withdrawing cash in Malaysia, I ended up withdrawing a little bit too much cash because in Malaysia, actually card works almost everywhere. And you need cash for like probably like small food stalls. But remember, I was sick, so I didn't really go out that much. And usually when I went out, actually card was probably fine. And then also chicken shawarma. Chicken shawarma was really good. I wanted to try beef shawarma, but I didn't have that many meals and I was too busy drinking coconut water. So anyways, maybe that's fine. And in the next episode, I'm going to be telling you about some stuff that's not related to Malaysia, but I wanted to do an episode that's like the life of a podcast episode, like from beginning to end and what I actually do for the podcast episodes. But in this podcast, we're just going to talk about like my experience from Malaysia. And overall, if there's one thing to say, I'll say Malaysia was great. It's great, but I was sick and I wish I could go like when I'm not sick. So maybe next time. And I had some other stories, but I'm not going to tell tell them because we are almost out of time. So with that, let's go ahead and wrap up. So thank you so much for listening until the end of Kuli English Podcast. I was your host, Chris. And if you like these kinds of stories, or if you want to like share this podcast episode with someone that you think might enjoy it, definitely feel free to do that. You can subscribe or follow if you want, but you don't have to. And so thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you next Tuesday.